So when I started my business in May 1st, 2018, I was doing everything. I was coaching, I was speaking to the parents, I was responding to the emails. And what I noticed is as my business grew in terms of enrollments, I went from, I think it was 16 to 48 to 90 to 100 to 150 to 250 to 300 enrollments. I was drowning. As my business started to grow, my problems were compounding. All of a sudden, I was losing that passion for the business because I wasn't doing the work that I loved. I was dealing with coaches, dealing with employees. So I had to change something. And right now, I did do those changes. I'm operating about 1,600 kids a year in my program, and I work about 10 hours a year on that business. Now, this is not by luck. I've managed to remove myself from in the business to working on the business. In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 key things that I did to transition and to make that shift from in the business to working on the business. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to Courtside Conversations. My name's Emile, founder and owner of Little Boomers Basketball, and it's a pleasure to be your host today. Wherever you're watching today's episode, I hope you're having a booming day, and yes, the pun is intended. My journey to entrepreneurship started on May 1st, 2018 when I launched my first basketball program with 9 kids enrolled. Today, thousands of kids across Australia are thriving in our programs, all thanks to the commitment and passion of our incredible franchisees. This podcast is here to give you real, straightforward, no BS insights into business, entrepreneurship, and what it's like to own a franchise. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. So when I started my business in May 1st, 2018, I was doing everything. I was coaching, I was speaking to the parents, I was responding to the emails, I was contacting the schools, contacting the daycares, trying to find new coaches. And what I noticed is as my business grew in terms of enrollments, I went from, I think it was 16 to 48 to 90 to 100 to 150 to 250 to 300 enrollments. I was drowning because I was doing everything in the business, right? As my business started to grow, my problems were compounding. All of a sudden, I was losing that passion for the business because I wasn't doing the work that I loved. I was dealing with coaches, dealing with employees, dealing with unhappy parents, trying to get back to inquiries. So I had to change something. And right now, I did do those changes. I'm operating about 1,600 kids a year in my program, and I work about 10 hours a year on that business. Now, this is not by luck. I've managed to remove myself from in the business to working on the business. In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 key things that I did to transition and to make that shift from in the business to working on the business. Let's get into it. So I'm going to go over 3 key points. The final point is going to be the most important one that's going to help you take that shift from in the business to on the business. And funny enough, we've got our Boomers Leadership Conference coming up in October 30th. It's our national conference. All the franchisees are flying down to Sydney. And the theme of that network, or the theme of that event, I should say, is how to move from working in the business to on the business. But one of the problems that I see with common business owners, right? And this was myself. When I first started this business, I loved coaching. I had a whistle in my mouth and I loved coaching. That's what drew me into the business. And that's like that for everybody else. A painter loves painting. A carpenter loves carpentry. An accountant loves cleaning the books. A lawyer loves doing the lawyer work. But what happens when you start a business is you start to realize that you're no longer doing the on the tools work anymore. You're hiring people. You're hiring a marketer, you're hiring an admin team, you're leading your team. All of a sudden, your skill set must radically change. Otherwise, if not, you're going to end up finding yourself micromanaging people. It's a completely different skill set than what first drew you to the love of the business, right? Now, if you want to run if your business, for example, you want to run a one-man band, like you say, yeah, Emile, I don't want to grow too big. I don't want to have all these departments. I just want to be a sole contractor. I just want to do the work. I don't want to have anybody under me. And I want to be happy like that. I hate managing people. I hate leading people. I hate learning how to do this. I just want to be a one-man band. Then that is so fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Kudos to you. But if you want to grow your business, if you want to have your business run without you being there, without you constantly being on the tools, you have to adopt a different mindset and a different skill set. Let's walk through point number 1. Point number 1, you must do a personal time audit on yourself with where you're spending your time on the business. What I recommend you do for an entire week from Monday to Sunday, right? Everything you do in your business, you must timestamp it with what task you did. For example, if you woke up and from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., you responded to emails, you put 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., admin responding to emails. This is going to be a little bit monotonous, but you must do this, and you're going to see why in point number 2. But you need to figure out as a business owner, right, where are you spending most of your time on business? Where are you spending that time? Because the reality is, if you're spending time on non-revenue producing activities, responding to emails, returning phone calls, doing bookkeeping, you are going to be falling behind, because as a business owner, your goal is to be leading the company, is to be bringing revenue in the company. But what happens is, because we've got to get all these fires, we've got to put out these fires, I've got to respond to these emails, you realize that you're not doing any activities throughout the week that's going to bring your company revenue. So let's do a time audit first, figure out where you're spending your most time in your business. And I'll give you an example. I did this for myself back when I was growing my business, Canterbury Bankstown, coaching. You know what? A crazy thing that came to my realization when I did my time audit, I was spending 10 hours a week responding to emails, responding to parent inquiries, returning missed phone calls, returning text message. 10 hours per week is where I was spending that time, and that had to change. Now I'm going to show you point number 2 of what you can do about that. The other day I was speaking to a lady, and she was telling me that she's run some hypothetical profit and loss numbers, and she wanted to run them by me. So I said, okay, what do you have? I've calculated, Emile, the court hire fees to be about $200 an hour. And then I said, whoa, hold on. Your numbers are really off. And so I said, where did you get those numbers from? Oh, look, I assumed. Never assume. I've created a franchise profit calculator where you can input real numbers, court hire fees, coaches' wages, how many kids you have in the program, so you can find out what your potential profit is per class. Click the link below to use the calculator. I hope you find it useful. Point number 2, you must delegate low-level or non-revenue generating tasks. Going back to that example that I provided, I realized I was spending about 40 hours a month on admin stuff, right? Parent makeup classes, customer inquiries, all that stuff. So one of the first things I did after I did that time audit was I hired a VA, and that VA managed the entire inbox for me. I created a training manual, and she, God bless her, Erin, she still works in the business. She managed the entire inbox for me, and I bought back 40 hours a month where I was able to work on the business. I was able to search for new venues to expand my business. I was able to bring on good quality coaches. I was able to contact schools. I was able to focus on revenue generating activities, because the reality is, and this might hurt you, because sometimes I notice as humans, as business owners, right, we constantly say, I'm busy, oh, I've had a busy day. Well, what are you busy with? Because you could be busy, but doing nothing that's moving the needle in your company, right? But you can have 2 hours in the day. That could be the most productive 2 hours of your day, right? So it's got nothing to do with the time you're putting in the business. It's the quality of the time. It's the activities that you're doing to move the needle in your business. Not all activities that you do in the business are equal. For example, if you do 5 hours of bookkeeping versus 5 hours of sales calls that brings 50K revenue into your company, those tasks are not equal, even though they're equal in time. 5 hours bookkeeping, 5 hours sales call, they're not equal, because one's just maintaining the books, not giving you any revenue in the company. The other's bringing you revenue in the company. So once you've done your time audit, and you need to figure out what tasks are draining your time, what tasks you don't like doing, right? Which is bookkeeping, admin. There's people that love doing that, guys. Hire someone that loves doing that. And then with your time that you have back, you need to ask yourself, what activities are you going to focus on that's going to bring the company revenue or expand the business? Point number 3, if you want to remove yourself from in the business to on the business, you must create strong, simple systems for your employees to use. There's a saying that goes, simple scales, fancy fails. For me, I've got 450 enrollments, 1,600 enrollments every year go through my area. I'm very picky with how I run my business. I've got a head coach and a couple of VAs that manage the business. I've got training guides and manuals and systems on how to do every key pillar on the business. How to greet the customers, how to greet the parents, how to onboard and hire a new coach. This is a 10-step process. They're really simple. They're easy to understand, and literally a 5-year-old can come in and read that and say, "Oh, okay, this is how I onboard a coach." Because if it's too complex, it's not going to be scalable. The only way to remove yourself from being in the business and not having somebody call you and saying, "Emile, how do I do this? Emile, this parent has said this. Emile, what do I do? What do I do here?" Is you have to have strong systems, training guides. I call them playbooks. I've got a playbook for my head coach, my manager of my area. I've got a playbook for my VA. I've got playbooks for how to do the business. But you're not going to be able to truly work on the business without having those playbooks. And unfortunately, do you know what a lot of people do? They do one of two things when they hire someone, right? Let's say I've just hired a VA or I hire a manager. They do one of two things. The first thing is they micromanage the person, right? They look over them. Are they doing it like this? Are they doing? As a result, they don't feel like they hired anyone because you're still doing the job. You're still looking over their shoulder like a hawk. Did that person do that right job, right? It's called controlism. If you hire someone and you micromanage them, you might as well not have hired them and just do the job yourself. That's problem number one. Problem number two is they're so desperate to hire and not do it. They say, "Here, get rid of it. I just want you to manage the inbox. Don't bother me. Respond to yourself. I got to go." And then you know what happens later? 2 months later, they get people telling them, "Oh, you sent me an email. Well, who sent you that email? That's not right. That's not accordance to our policy. Who told you that? Oh, your staff member told me that." "What do you mean they told you that? We don't offer that service." And then you find yourself having to have a discussion with your employee. "Why did you respond to that like that?" "But we don't do that." You didn't take the time to properly train them, to properly onboard them, and to show them this is how we do this. And I had a friend of mine, he hired a VA. And then he fired the VA a month later. I said, "Why'd you fire the VA?" He's like, "Man, I had to keep telling him what to do. Like, why am I hiring you if I'm telling you what to do?" And then I asked him this. I said, "Okay, did you onboard them?" "Well, no, not really." "Did you have a comprehensive training guide for how to do every part of the business?" "No, not really." Well, you can't really blame the VA for doing what they were doing, right? Or for asking you for questions. They weren't onboarded properly, and they didn't have any training guides. So you've got to have strong and simple systems. Guys, that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, or I hope you didn't. Just comment below. Hate, love, guys, spread the word. Our Courtside Conversation channel is growing. Reach out to me personally. Give me your feedback. I'm always seeking feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly. If you know somebody that could do with this advice, or that needs it, or that's struggling to remove themselves from the business, and you can see it in their face, you can see it in their family life, send this video to them, and I hope you have a great week. God bless.